Welcome back, friends. Zach here, full-time reseller. And this morning I'm going to mix it up and do something a little bit different, something I haven't done in probably over a year, and that's make another video about how I do my shipping practices and how I get things fulfilled on eBay. So follow along and I'll show you how I save some money. I'm going to start off by sharing with you the most commonly used mailers that I use to fulfill orders within my eBay store. And so just going to kind of start from left to right. I have a few tools of the trade. And on the left side, obviously a sharp pair of good fine tip scissors is always helpful, especially if you're a clothing reseller. You might have to trim off some loose ends on some clothing. You might have to cut some tape, you might have to cut some paper, you might even have to cut a box. And then above that, I just have a Sharpie fine tip pin. I generally just use that to mark my packages or boxes with. The last thing you want to do is get something mixed up. I've done that, it's embarrassing, and then you got to give a refund, and then you're going to question what you have on hand and if you didn't send the other item out to someone different. So don't do that. Now underneath it, I have packing paper, and that is a 24 by 24 inch square piece of packing paper. I buy it in bulk. I get it for like $13, and I think I buy 250 sheets of it, and I just get it at Walmart. I was buying packing paper online, but I've really backed off how much I'm using, so I went back to buying them at Walmart. Now, not everything's going to be cheaper at Walmart, but if you're in a pinch or if you're not using certain materials as much, you might compare prices, and it might just be worth your time to just buy locally, even if it costs just a little bit more to save you the trouble of having it shipped. Now, as I move over, you can see I've got a large packing tape gun as well as a small Scotch tape roll. And those two items are going to be pretty imperative for your shipping. I tend to use the tape obviously a lot more with boxes, but you never know. You might get a hole in one of the poly mailers and have to kind of mend it up. So always have some tape off hand. And regardless if it's just Scotch tape or a packing tape 3-inch or 5-inch roll, it's just good to have those things in bulk. And so right next to the tape gun and the Scotch tape, you're going to see a 6x9 bubble mailer. I keep a few of those off hand, and I typically just send smaller items like a wallet or maybe, it was hard to say, something small that's hard, that's just needing a little bit of protection but doesn't need a box, possibly doesn't need anything too serious, but I want to save some costs on my shipping, and so I want to keep it protected, and I'm going to use a bubble mailer. I also sometimes will keep the size above that offhand, but I really have kind of gotten away from using mini bubble mailers because I find that I can still use a poly mailer and wrap up the item in bubble wrap or pack it good in paper, and it's still going to be pretty safe. And so now as I drop down below, you're going to see what is a 10 by 13 gray poly mailer, and that is my most commonly used item to ship with. It is dirt cheap. I buy these by the 1,000 off of Amazon. It's not that much money. I think I'm paying like 7 cents a piece or maybe even a little bit less for them. And I use that tremendously. I typically use it with lighter weight garments such as t-shirts, sometimes a smaller pair of women's jeans, performance items, polo shirts, you name it. You can stuff a lot of different stuff in a 10 by 13 mailer, but the mailers I use the most are going to be to the right hand side. And so shout out to my boy over there at Surf's Up. He was the one that gave me the idea to spend a little bit more money and use some colored poly mailers. And so I kind of stole this idea from him because it was just a great marketing ploy, and I actually get a lot of great feedback for the effort and care I put into packaging my items, but I also get a lot of feedback due to the color of these two poly mailers. Now, the first one you're going to see is a Tiffany blue, and it's a 10 by 15, and I typically ship a lot of smaller, lightweight jackets, heavier pants. I can squeeze a lot of things into this mailer, and it's Tiffany blue, so I typically just use it for women's items, and I don't keep as many offhand because I don't sell as many women's garments. But again, I buy these on Amazon, I buy them in bulk, and I get them for cheap, and you wouldn't believe all the good feedback I get from women who just say they love the packaging, and I know it comes back to that Tiffany blue mailer. So shout out to my boy over at Surf's Up Thrift. He was the one that came up with that. I definitely took that from him, and it's been working for me. And then the more commonly used 10 by 15 poly mailer is going to be the hunter green one, and I use that for men's items. And again, I'll use that for heavier clothing, bigger items, lighter weight jackets, a lot of jeans go in these. And I'll also use these 10 by 15 poly mailers. I will wrap up old beat up tennis shoes, a lot of sandals, and I'll just wrap them in packing paper and then slide them in these. And sometimes I might even pack a little bit of paper between the two shoes. And I've got away with doing that, and it saved me a lot of shipping costs because shoes can be heavy and a box can also be heavy. And just as a side note, you might want to indicate that in your description, that if you are shipping something inside of a poly mailer that may not be typically shipped inside of one, that just indicate on your listing that you're going to do that so you don't get any bad feedback, you don't get somebody hollering or complaining. And the other thing to think about is I never ship any leather shoes inside of a poly mailer. Generally, those are going to sell for more money and the people are probably paying more shipping on them. And so for that reason, I always put those in a box. I just kind of eat the cost of it. And I want to ensure that something that's more expensive or a higher ticket item is going to get to that place a little safer just because it's making me more money. And that's just something to do to help you. So now I'm going to go ahead and share with you how I use boxes and what box sizes I predominantly use with my business. So these are the 3 most commonly used size boxes in my business. And to the left, you'll see a small square 6x6x6. I typically use that for shipping coffee mugs, sunglasses, anything that just needs a little bit more protection but isn't very sizable. It's going to go in that 6x6x6. Pick those up at Walmart. And I've gotten away from buying boxes online. They are cheaper when you buy them in bulk that way, but I'm just not shipping in boxes as much in the last year as I've really whittled my store down to using poly mailers and selling predominantly a lot of clothing. However, in the spring and summer months when I garage sale, I do source more hard goods, so my need for boxes increases. So I always have a lot of those offhand in the warmer months. And as we move towards winter, I stock up because it's just a good way to have some additional expenses for your taxes, for your write-offs. So in the middle, I would say is the most commonly used box for my store. It's an 11-inch by 7.5 by 5-inch box. I fit a lot of smaller women's shoes, some smaller bowls, kitchen items, you name it, it goes inside of this one. I put a lot of hats inside of this box. And it's just a nice size box for items like that. However, it won't fit a lot of men's shoes. And so for that, I have to upgrade to what's next to it. And that's the 12 by 8 by 10-inch box. And it typically fits big jackets, boots, and all bigger items very well. I like to use these 3 boxes because it keeps me under that 12-inch diameter. When you go past the 12-inch diameter, there's an upcharge with the United States Postal Service and your shipping rates are just going to go up. So I've whittled it down to these 3 boxes, but I'll share a couple more boxes with you that I occasionally use for bigs. So here are 3 simple items that I use for protection when I ship items, regardless if I'm shipping them in a poly mailer or if they're going in a box. And so those items would be packing paper or void fill, and you can use old recycled newspapers. You can use a lot of different stuff. You can use some of those air-filled cells that they ship items in and reuse them, if you know what I'm talking about. But to the right, I have a roll of bubble, and bubble is generally a little bit cheaper to buy online. If you're a hard goods seller and you're selling a lot of delicate, fragile items, I suggest buying it in bulk online. And so bubble, I typically will get huge rolls of it. I don't go through as much bubble because again, I'm mainly a clothing seller and there's not as much need for it, but I always have a couple rolls offhand. And then good old fashioned packing peanuts. I like to use those for a lot of my Pyrex, a lot of the very delicate and fragile items I might send because I do sell some of those type items, especially the antique and vintage items, kitchenware items, anything that could just break. And so just know those mediums are there to protect items. Don't get cheap when it comes to packing your items. You don't want the headache of having to give a refund on something very expensive because you were too cheap to pack a few dollars worth of void fill or an extra layer of bubble, or to just put the money down on some packing peanuts to have that for peace of mind. So those 3 items will help you tremendously with protection. So now we're getting into some of the more big boy boxes, some of the more uncommon used box sizes, but I still always keep several of these offhand, especially if I have some big items listed in my inventory. So we're going to start it off at the bottom. The bottom box is the one I probably use the most out of these big boys. It is a 15 by 12 by 10, and I generally use it also for larger items, coveralls, heavier, big plus size jackets. And I, believe it or not, use this box a lot to fit backpacks in. I also will flip this box around and cut it down and lower the height of the box, which ultimately reduces the price of the shipping on it because it is over the 12-inch length or height diameter. And so anytime you can reduce a box down, I strongly encourage it, but make sure that you solidify or fortify the box, tape it up really good, make sure it doesn't look too beat up. I have sent some Frankenstein looking boxes or Franken boxes in my time, and I'm always kind of sweating bullets, hoping that they get there and the item gets there safely. You don't want to do that. But again, these are boxes that are kind of less commonly used, and I do use that 15-inch box and ship it through USPS quite often. But when I start to get into the middle box and the top box, the medium red labeled box, those there often are probably best to be shipped through UPS or FedEx. Now I'll go to the middle box. The middle box is a 17 by 11 by 13, and oftentimes this guy's gonna have a lot of big hard goods, collectibles, pots, pans, electronics, and I do use this box a fair amount too. If I can cut it down in height, I try to, but it's big and it's heavy, and depending on the weight plus the size, it can get really expensive to ship this all the way out to the East Coast, because I live in northern New Mexico and that's a long way, and so I use that box quite a bit. Now the very top box is a 22 by 13 by 15. Seldomly do I use this box. I think I only keep 2 or 3 offhand, but occasionally some heavy big electronics is probably what's going to go in it. I have sent a blow mold in it, a Halloween ghost blow mold in a medium box before, but be careful with bigger. Bigger is not always better. It's going to cost you more. And just remember, shipping rates through USPS continue to climb, and when they climb up, the rates on other shipping agencies also go up. So just watch your costs. I'm going to jump down here and share with you my shipping scale, my thermal printer, and we'll wind this thing down. For the last part of this video, I'm going to share with you a little bit more about how I do my shipping and share with you the equipment I use to weigh as well as label the items. But just understand this, if you're new, if you're just getting started, if you're just a hobby enthusiast, not really sure about what to have or how to get going, just know that when I started, I was literally just writing people's addresses right on the box. You could literally take a piece of computer paper, write the address that way, cut it out and tape it to the box. You can print the addresses on printer paper from your computer and tape it to the box. Those are all ways to make it look a little bit more professional than just handwriting. But if you're going to progress in this world, if you're going to grow and scale your business, you're probably going to want to think about taking it to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you now a few of the items that I use on a daily basis that are tools of the trade that you just have to have, especially when you're selling in a high volume. So this little red scale is the thing I broke out with, and this is just a Walmart Mainstays food scale. I can't remember what the poundage goes up to, but it's not very much. But just starting out, this will get you by, and just make sure that it's fairly accurate. I know generic stuff's not the best way to roll, but I bought this on clearance and it got me by for a good 6 months before I was able to invest in the Cadillac. And the Cadillac to me is Rollo. I don't work for Rollo. I'm not an affiliate and I'm not trying to push their item in any way, but they do make really good equipment. I know it seems to be an industry standard, and when I broke out reselling and I got to know how the game was working, I seen a lot of the very successful YouTubers, content creator, resellers using these. So after I had the capital, I decided to go ahead and buy the freight scale. I believe it goes plus 80 pounds, maybe even 100 pounds. Don't quote me on that. I can't quite remember, but I think the most I've ever put on it is like 25, and it did just fine with it. It's very, very industrial. It's very heavy duty, and it's good about being space saving. So if you're limited on space, it's going to be the guy for you. And then this guy here, which is pumped out 3,000, well, probably 2,000, 2,200 labels in the last year and a half. It's been a workhorse. It's been a machine. I'm super, super blessed to have this. When I first broke out, like I said, I was just writing people's addresses on the box. And then after a while, I realized that producing boxes at a high level, at a high volume, I needed to get with the program and get out of the Stone Age. And so what I did is I bought a thermal printer on Amazon, but I bought a generic one. I had a lot of problems with it. And so I sent it back, and I just decided to fork the money over. It was well worth it. Rollo products are incredible. The customer service is incredible. And I live in northern New Mexico, and I think their headquarters is out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So when I do need to buy labels or any of their products, any type of supplies, they're very good about expediting them immediately. Seems to be one of the fastest shipping companies I know. So shout out to Rollo. Any way you get started, just get going. You can start big, you can start small, you can grow. That's what I did. So I hope that this little video gives you a little bit of insight into what I, a full-time reseller, uses to fulfill my orders and ship all across the world, as I am a international shipping partner or in the international shipping program through eBay. And so that means that I ship things just everywhere. And the best thing you can do, again, is to just get started. Don't be afraid about what limited equipment you have. It really doesn't take much. All that it really takes is ambition, drive, and the courage to say, I want more out of life. So I hope that for you. If you have any questions about how I do my shipping, how I resell, how I source goods, please reach out to me. I'd love to answer those questions. I love reselling and I love to learn. So share with me your experiences also. And as always, if you like this video, please hit like, make a comment, or please subscribe.